Yo, what is up, everybody? So let's go back again to another chapter, story, Cave, written by Old School Horror. Remember to check out the links in the description. Show love to the author, like, comment, and subscribe. Chapter 5. After the children ran for help, Tom began a frantic and desperate search for his son. The tunnel was leading down to the dark heart of the earth. Also, as Tom was pressing forward more and more, the number of spiders which were clinging to the walls seemed to increase. Tom hated this, but he was interested only in getting Alex back. Spiders were falling on him from above. He was constantly running into webs which seemed like partially broken. Just as if something big had passed through here recently. He almost fell a few times because of the spiders, which got squished under his feet. Their slippery inwards were making his job harder. Tom was concentrating with all his might not to fall. The smell was also getting worse and worse. It was like the stench of rot and decay, but combined with sulfur and coppery smell of dried blood. Tom was running, but the quality of the air was deplorable. For a split second, a stray thought rushed through this chaos-filled mind. How come that these spiders flourished in this awful environment? He had heard the existence of cave spiders, but not in this number, size, and variety. He had to leave the scientific questions behind because his lungs were burning. The lack of oxygen and various toxins made the tunnel whirl around him. He felt the flashlight shake in his hand. After brushing down the spiders which were crawling on him, he continued following the tunnel. Some of them had bitten him, but he didn't really care. There was nothing he could have done anyway. Had this been some kind of competition on some stupid commercial television channel, he wouldn't have come down here for $1 billion, because his son was in danger. He had no choice. In the blink of an eye, his feet found no purchase anymore. He slipped, fell on his ass. From there, the road was leading only down. Squishing spiders and hurting almost every square inch of his body, Tom was sliding down with the speed of a roller coaster. He shouted, and his shouts were echoing through the endless tunnels, but there was nobody to heed them. Only the darkness and the spiders. After several seconds of sliding, he hit the bottom of the tunnel. The fall wasn't that bad, but it added to the pain Tom was feeling through his body. He pointed his flashlight around and was astonished by the size of the chamber. By his quick estimation, it was almost as big as a commercial swimming pool. There were lots of columns made of earth, which seemed to support the ceiling. Tom stood up and began walking around, trying to pick up movement or sound. Alex's screams, maybe. To his surprise, he didn't see any spiders around. There were some which had fallen down with him, but after he had hit the bottom, that was all. Something was not right. He could feel it. Nothing had been right for a long time, of course, but his guts told him but there was something even worse here. He saw lumps of earth which had roughly been the shape of an egg, much larger though. These formations were reaching waist height. They were full of holes the size of a drain in the kitchen sink. His natural tryptophobia had been triggered, and his skin began erupting in goosebumps. Tom hated this sensation, which got stronger when he saw the first thin black spider leg coming out of one of the holes. It was probing the air, feeling for vibrations. Tom turned and walked away to find some passage out of this place. There was no sign of Alex or whatever had taken him. There was no other choice for him but only to press forward. His guts spoke to him again. Tom couldn't get the probing spider's legs out of his mind, so he stopped and turned to see what was behind him. From the many egg-shaped rock formations, a legion of small black spiders swarming out. It was as if all the ground behind them came alive. "Run," his instincts told him. So he ran like crazy. These spiders seemed much more aggressive than any of them he'd seen so far. As Tom was running between the columns and the strange nest, he saw more and more spiders sprouting out around them. The noise which the spiders were making with their small, tiny pointy legs was audible in the silent cave. Of course, a few of them would have no sound at all, but considering that there must have been at least 1,000 of them, Tom could hear their collective movements. Hope was fading quickly, but Tom didn't give up. The adrenaline and desire to hold his son again in his arms drove him forward and toward the other side of the chamber. Another tunnel lay in front of him. This one was a little wider than the previous one. Here, the spiderwebs became thicker, and there were more. Tom ran straight into them. Some of them broke off easily, but the others were harder to tear. They were slowing Tom down a great deal. He turned for a split second and shone his flashlight behind him. To his great surprise, nothing was following him. Also, the rustling became more distant. They had been scared to enter this place. This was his first thought. The presence of the webs was unnerving, together with the fleeing of the small spiders. Tom looked around carefully. Bones were littering the cave floor. Blood froze in his veins when he saw several human skulls on the ground. This was when he realized that there was really a high chance that neither he or his son were going to make it out alive. One of the skulls rattled. Tom pointed his flashlight toward it and felt his legs turn to rubber. Thick, hairy legs were spurting from under the skulls. The light revealed many eyes gleaming through the eye sockets of the skull. It was the largest spider he had ever seen so far, bigger even than the tarantulas he would see on TV. Tom noticed now that there were many skulls lying on the ground. They all began to move. He had no choice but to run. Even though he was tired, and thirsty, Tom bolted towards the deepest parts of the cave. With the army of small spiders covering his only retreat, he had no choice. Running like hell and clenching the flashlight with desperation, he saw movement all around him. The air was barely breathable, and the temperature was rising. Sweat, blood, dirt, and spider juice was covering him head to toe. The tunnel ended again, and he fell for about 6 feet. As Tom couldn't see if there was a bottom or not, he almost had a heart attack when he saw the gaping darkness under him. But it wasn't deep, fortunately for him. It wasn't too hard either, but squishy and soft. It was also reeking like nothing else he had ever smelled in his life. Tom stood quickly up and surveyed his surroundings. He saw eggs everywhere, from small to large. They came in all shapes and sizes. Spider webs covering everything. He got covered in them. Small spiders were running in panic through the webs, which had already stuck to him. He felt the tickling of their small legs on his skin. With panicked moves, he struggled to brush them off. Some of them fell, but some remained tangled in the webs. Tom took a few steps forward and heard what sounded to him as a gentle flow of water. He continued with high hopes on the ground, which was infested with spider eggs. Then, after a minute or two, he saw what it was. A small and thin stream with reddish coloration to it. Even the ground and the rocks in and around the stream were red. He quickly found out where the redness was coming from. It was oozing out of the mucus substance which was covering the ground and in which the eggs were embedded. It was some kind of fertile substance for this hatchery of monsters. Tom suddenly realized where the stream is going. It goes straight out through the rocks and continues on its way through the fields around the town. This where the town got its name. A faint scream was resonating through the underground chamber. Or was it just Tom's tired mind playing tricks on him? He wasn't sure. "Alex?" he shouted, but then thought that it might have been a mistake. A sharp thud sounded behind him. Tom pivoted, but he wished he didn't. An enormous beast of a spider stood before him. Its body was at least waist height. Many small eyes were staring menacingly at Tom. The hideous creature had over 8 eyes, as spiders usually have. There were at least 16 on its head. Tom unconsciously wondered for a moment what purpose do those eyes serve, since it's pitch black inside the cave. In a conscious manner, however, he drew back. But when he felt the ground is sloping downward, he stopped. Tom took a quick glance behind him, saw a large hole in the ground. It was several feet wide, but he couldn't estimate its depth because it was full of spiders. Like an undulating mass of dark water, The spiders were crawling upon each other. They seemed to be the size of his palm, maybe smaller, but the prospect of falling in there made him rethink his options fast. The gigantic spider screeched, so Tom pointed the flashlight toward it again. It raised its two front legs up, its body raised partially in the air. It was a terrible sight. Showing obviously superiority before attacking its prey, the spider screeched again. Tom didn't wait to see what was coming next. He darted in the direction of the red stream, and also the scream which he had heard earlier seemed to come from this direction. So, it was his only chance to both try and escape and also find the sun. The giant spider, however, darted after him. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of chapter